You're listening to Packers Talk Network. PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans who just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and headlines and all that nonsense. We're sticking with real football. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason, which we're done with. If y'all want to support this podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all the socials and definitely head over to YouTube and subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out a great deal. We would love it if you would. And before we get started, let's have a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at ticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Tim, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Miles. How are you?
I'm good, man. We got a secured quarterback.
It's nice. We don't have to talk about the contract anymore, I guess, and it's awesome he's back in the fold and locked up back on the practice field where he should be.
No more speculation.
No more speculation. We can talk about the numbers, I guess, but it's awesome. I'm, so happy that they got him locked up and ready to roll with the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, he's the franchise quarterback. 3 in a row. It's official.
We're spoiled.
Packers did it, man. We are spoiled. I will say, for one, I am happily spoiled.
Yes.
If anybody is trying to hurl that as an insult in my direction, it's just not going to work. I am very, very happy to be spoiled in this way. Goot, I know it's a little bit forward-looking. Why not make it 4 in a row? We've got a ways to go, right? But let's not rule that out, right? We're going to keep this QB factory rolling. But, yeah, very, very excited about this deal. I'm excited that it feels like, the final piece is in place, right? Like all the guys have been here. The good attitude has been flowing. Like the offense has been making plays, been getting beat. It's common for the defense to win early in camp. We've talked about that. We'll talk about it more. But, yeah, just seeing Love get back in there, it feels like everybody has been sort of collectively holding their breath, players included, waiting for this to happen. Now it's happened, and this thing is in motion. Like nobody's looking around at anything. They are full speed ahead. I guess the obvious question, and let's answer it, right? And we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but let's just go ahead and ask, right? Is he overpaid?
No, he's not. And I know the numbers are high. He's now tied for the highest average per year, though all the numbers aren't really, he's not necessarily making $55 million per year. It's, you got to dig into the numbers to get the true
of course
totals and what he is. But yeah, we can, he's tied with Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, but we've been talking for a while since Trevor Lawrence got his contract that this is where Jordan Love was going to fall. So I don't think you're surprised. I'm not surprised by what the numbers are. When you have a franchise quarterback, you have to pay him like a franchise quarterback, and you're paying him for what he's going to be. Not even for what he currently is or what he was last season. You're paying him for what you expect him to be. So that's what you have to pay him. That's what franchise top 10, top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are going to make. And if you're worried about the money, I get that it's a smaller sample size with him and there's risk, but there's risk in anything you do in football. There's a risk in any contract they give any player or any acquisition that they make. There is risk. There's always going to be risk. And I'd rather take that risk on a guy like Jordan Love, who has shown that he can be a franchise quarterback and is a franchise quarterback, and, expect him to continue on his trajectory that he was on for the last 10 games of last season. So, yeah, I don't think he's overpaid at all. And I think if you ask that question a year from now or 2 years from now, we would be laughing at it and saying he might be underpaid because the cap continues to go up. Quarterbacks are going to continue to get paid. And it's just a matter of how quickly somebody overtakes Jordan Love for the highest paid player. And whether that's Dak Prescott, who's coming due, or someone else down the line, it's going to happen pretty quickly. So, no, I don't think he's overpaid at all. Again, you're paying him for what he's going to accomplish and what he's going to do over the length of the contract, the 4-year extension. And if he produces like we hope he can, like we think he can, like we saw over the last half of last season, then no, he's not overpaid whatsoever.
Absolutely agree. Wholeheartedly agree. You had to pay it. There's no other option, and I think that there was probably even a lot more room for Love's side to push this thing because full well that Goot cannot walk away from this player at this point. You just can't. You can't do it. Not that, it was that kind of contentious, and I don't know that Jordan Love was over there just insisting on making the absolute most money possible ever. Unfortunately, I think the wrong person this past week said this, but Jordan Love does have a responsibility to the other players at his position around the league, right? In a position that he's in, you do have to capitalize to a certain extent to push the market for your peers and for yourself here in the next 4 years. Dak Prescott said that this week though, and that I think he's the wrong one to be talking about that at this point. If he'd won some championships or at least one, maybe it's a little different, but he's at the point where it's like, dude, you're better off taking the Tom Brady perspective and make sure your guys around you get paid, because that's probably your best chance at having a good team.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree with what you're saying, and Dallas is an example of a team who screwed up when and how to pay a franchise quarterback, and they're paying for it right now, and they could very well pay for it a lot coming up soon, whether that's whatever they have to give Prescott, who has all the leverage, or they might watch him walk out the door for nothing because they can't franchise him. And that's the mistakes they made before with letting him get to his last year of his contract and not extend him at the time. So Green Bay's extending Jordan Love without letting him get into that last year and finish the last year. So they didn't have to play the whole franchise tag game, which can be messy. So they avoided that, and they avoided creating a messy relationship with Jordan Love and his agency, getting it done now instead of taking it into the season and kind of seeing what he's going to do during the season and deciding, what numbers they want it to come in at. So get it done now when he's the guy, when you feel he's your guy and you're committed to him and you don't have questions about it. Why wait? Why haggle? Just get it done. And they did. And that's a credit to them. And you're seeing the mess that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys created now that they're going to be going through with Dak Prescott.
Yeah. And our Showers jumping in with us. Good to see you. The Love deal hurt Dallas. They are now in a real bind. And it's their own doing. They haven't handled these things well, and they've got not just one player in Prescott, but you got CD, you've got Parsons, you got some guys down there that need to be taken care of, and it's going to be tough to do that. So I'm definitely glad that we're not in their shoes. Certainly grateful for the way the Packers front office has navigated the salary cap, especially through the turbulent times over the last few years. But now approaching this is another opportunity that if you didn't do this right, it definitely could have hurt you over the next few years. And if you do it right, which it feels like they did, to the extent that they can, you at least set yourself up the best you can. And looking at that, right now, your offense, the entire core of your offense is intact for this season and next season. But you could extend that if need be. So I think they've put themselves in a very, very good position. One of the major plays that has worked in their favor and contributed to this right now is the way they've drafted at receiver, right? Being able to, they're essentially paying their entire receiving core like $12 million this year or something like that. Yeah. Whereas there's a lot more players out there that are just, making more than that on their own. So you're essentially you're getting the benefit of that rookie QB contract that everybody's so excited to have if they can get it. With obviously having your QB locked up at a good deal that he's happy with, the team's happy with, and you still don't have a major salary cap bind. So well done to the front office. And honestly, if you have to get to the point where you're talking about who has leverage, things aren't in a good place, right? Like if either side has to flex leverage, then, that's not good. That's not where you want to be. You kind of want both sides to have taken a step, toward the middle to say, all right, here, let's try to do this. Let's try to get here. We want to be here. We want to be here. And, you both make good faith efforts to appease each other. It feels like that's what happened here. Even at the end there, and we acknowledged this before last week, where, there was a few things floating around. Now Jordan Love's not practicing, but he's out there. And, you get the one rumor about maybe in the next few weeks, and we're all just like, what? Whoa, hey, hang on a second. That's not okay, And certainly there was probably some negotiation tactics at play there. But
Absolutely.
even through that, you see Jordan Love and Goot out there on the practice field seeming to be very, very friendly and not really worried about it. So all of that feels like this thing went very well for both sides. So very happy. And then R Showers has another comment for us. Says, you have to be glad to be us instead of what Miami had to do or had to give Tua. I'd be very, very worried if I were them. Yeah, I mean, I think the argument that people like to bring up, certainly our fellow brethren across the NFC North, it was just a good half season, a good 9 games, or whatever it was. Try to discount that. Contracts are about what is about to happen, right? That's kind of the way the saying goes. I probably butchered it a little bit, but the contracts are for what you're going to do, not what you have done. Right. In Tua's case, what we've seen with the head injuries that he's had, you definitely have to be a little bit more worried about how he projects over the next 4 years versus how Jordan Love projects over the next 4 years right now. Right? Like literally the first game of the season could change that. But yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. They're in the same position. You got to give Tua the deal, right?
Yeah, they had to. I mean, what's your alternative? And I don't think Tua is a bad quarterback, but he's not Jordan Love. Jordan Love's a better quarterback right now, and he's got a higher ceiling.
And less concerns.
Less injury concerns, sure. And if you look at what they're doing, like Tua is very reliant on who he has around him and the system that he's in. Jordan Love, yes, he has talented receivers and tight ends. He had that last season, but they were all inexperienced and they were hurt a lot. Like he's not throwing to Tyreek Hill, who's a proven All-Pro, or Jalen Waddle, who I don't know if he was an All-Pro last year, but he had a huge year. He's
very talented.
He's more proven than any of the Packers receivers. Like he's not playing in that system, and he put up the numbers he did, and he played at a higher level than Tua did, and he's more talented. Like his ceiling is higher than Tua's. So yeah, I understand like people that knock Tua a little bit, but I also think sometimes it's undue. And yeah, if you're the Dolphins, if you don't pay him, what's your alternative? Like you're going to draft somebody? Well, okay, I guess you can try that route, but who else are you going to get? Like they were in a tough position there. But it also doesn't mean Tua is their guy for the next 10 years or anything like that. I think he's good. He fits their system. They know how to manage Tua. They know how to set up the offense for him very well. I mean, that offense was pretty damn good last year. I know they, were terrible in the playoff game against the Chiefs, but they're pretty explosive. So, it puts you in a tough spot. But as a Packer fan, I'm not sitting here like, wow, they're in a tough spot with Jordan. Like, you pay him, or what's our alternative? It's like, we have our guy. Like, just pay him.
Yeah,
just pay him. And that's the difference to me between an upper level franchise quarterback and a guy who's not quite that, and still a good quarterback, but not quite that. And Tua, he's your franchise quarterback, and if you truly believe he's your guy, you pay him. I don't care what the numbers are, and you want to be some of these other teams who are trying to find their guy. Like, no, like we're in a great position. Like this is a great thing to do, is paying your guy, because he's the next franchise guy. Like I don't see any problem with the contract they gave him. And, to compare it to somebody else probably isn't fair, especially somebody like Tua. But, they did what they had to do, and it was the right decision. And I don't think there's going to be any regrets with it at all.
No, I mean, you obviously can't predict injuries, and I think that's the most obvious thing that could happen to derail the contract.
Right, that's the unknown.
Yeah, but is Jordan Love gonna fall apart from an ability perspective to the point where, like, how did you pay this guy this much money? God, I
I don't see it.
I don't know how. I don't know how that happens. I think that it's safe to say that that would be unprecedented if something like that were to happen. So, does that mean he's, on his way to a Hall of Fame career? No, I mean, there's still a lot of games that have to be played, right? And certainly things have to work around him for him to be able to excel and grow. But right now, and we were talking about this, before we got started, things just sort of feel like they're going well right now in camp. They're off to a great start. There's a lot of things that I think we were assuming would happen or we made projections about, and they're sort of starting to fizzle into fruition. And, one that I just want to, pat this show's self on the back a little bit. We called Jordan Morgan at right guard from a long shot. Like we were out there, I think in February. That was one of our first scouting episodes that we did. And that was what I said. It's like, this is a guy that could move in at guard. He's got the athleticism. He's got the intelligence. Obviously, right guard would be the play there. You've got Elgin Jenkins. You don't need somebody moving into left guard. So he's looking good at right guard so far in training camp. So that, I think, was fun to see. Very good thing for us to see. We've been frustrated by the right guard position. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and Adam Stenavich came out today and said that they have him there because that's his best chance to start this year. So they're going to give him every chance. He's competing with Sean Ryan, obviously, but the fact that he's been pretty exclusively a right guard, OTAs and minicamp, they were moving him around. I think he played 4 of the 5 positions, everything but center. Now they're pretty much keeping him at right guard. I don't think he's done much tackle work. I think it's surprising. I thought they would move him around a little more. I thought he'd get more reps at tackle while also working at guard. But yeah, they view him, at least for now, at least for this season, at right guard. It doesn't mean he's going to be a guard forever. There may come a time where he kicks back outside and goes back to left
for sure.
Yeah, which is his natural position. I would still really like to see him there and have the chance there, but I get why they're doing what they're doing. So I think the competition between him and Sean Ryan is that's one of the big competitions, certainly on offense, to watch the rest of training camp and preseason to see how that shakes out. But yeah, he's got to see Kenny Clark every practice, and that's tough when you're making it's tough for anybody, but it's really tough for a rookie who's never played guard. He's going to get thrown to the fire, but it can only make him better. Right. So
we can think of a few guys who got thrown to the fire against some legendary players, right? Ja did okay against Devontae. So yeah, I think that's a good thing when it can be done right. When you've got a guy who's capable, and then you got a good leader on the other side who can whoop the kid a little bit, but can also teach him how to not get whooped. Yeah. Gotta give a shout out to our guy Matthew Tan here. Miles and Tim are legendary. Matthew, you're too kind, sir. But it is good to see you. Glad you're here with us again this evening. This is our first preseason game next week against the Cleveland Clowns. We'll just see how that goes. Certainly very excited to see some 2024 Packers football, even if it is the first preseason game. I always enjoy the first preseason game probably the most, because it's just like, I don't care who it is, man. I see Packer helmets for the first time in months. Yeah. Let's go. I do not care.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because then it kind of sinks in like, it's preseason football after that.
Yeah, right.
But the first one, it's kind of cool. It's just like, here they are, they're back again. After a long wait. So.
Yes, so very excited about that. Glad to have you with us, Matthew. But yeah. Morgan looking good at right guard. And again, just patting ourselves on the back a little bit. I'll do it. It's fine. I'll be a jerk, but got to do it, right? Like, we got something right. I owned up to being as wrong as I could be about Josh Jacobs, right? I think I like swung for the fences on that. As like, no way, not no how could that happen, and it certainly did.
I didn't think so.
So we could be super wrong, but we could also be kind of right. And another thing that I believe we started talking about pretty early was Mr. Evan Williams. I put Evans in there. Evan Williams, though, looking like Micah Hyde. That seems to be the comparisons he's drawing in camp so far. What are you thinking here, sir? How is this safety battle going to play out?
It's been interesting. I mean, they've been rotating the guys, which I don't think is a surprise. Rotating Bullard, Williams,
Right.
and even Anthony Johnson next to McKinney. So I don't think that's surprising. They got to figure out which young player is gonna start next to McKinney. But it just seems like every practice, the reporters who are there following it, sending out their tweets and their reports on the practice, like Evan Williams is making plays every practice. He's around the football. They're moving him around, whether he's down in the box, whether he's up high, whether he's in the slot, whatever. But he seems like a football player. Like, he might not be, he's not a guy that may ever blow us away with statistics or, pro balls or all pros or anything like that, or the big contracts. But he just seems like a guy that the coaches are really going to like, and they're going to trust probably pretty quickly. And he's going to fight his way and find a role in the team. And it reminds you kind of Micah Hyde. He's wearing Micah Hyde's old number. He's going to play some safety. He might play some slot. He might play down in the box as an extra linebacker or whatever. He's going to attack the run, but he seems like he's just going to be a dude that's really smart, knows his assignments, can make some plays, and he's around the ball, and he's going to make plays. He's going to make the plays that are can be the difference in the game. So, yeah, he's one of the early stars, and again, it's 1 week into camp, but he's one of the early stars so far at training camp, and he just seems like he's going to be a guy, maybe not from game one, against the Eagles, but at some point he's going to start carving out a bigger role, I think, on the defense and being a key player as the season goes along.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he's a guy that forces coaches to find a way to play him.
Yes.
When you have a player like that, that is a very good thing. You want to hold on to that guy. It's very exciting, and I kind of had a feeling early on. It seemed like right out of the draft they got a really good haul of safeties. Even Oladapo, I'm excited to see how he fits into all of this. But also, Kalen King's out there making plays. So, this secondary, if this rookie class, continues with the trajectory they're on, it's just incredibly deep and very talented. Very, very talented. I mean, it's not even that, it's carried by Jair Alexander and Xavier McKinney. Stokes seems to be definitively taking the job for the ones. That seems to be the murmurs that I've heard.
Yeah, it seems like he's getting all the reps or most of the reps with the ones. And that's a little surprising just because I thought there would be more of a rotation there with him and Valentine. I mean, they're definitely still in competition, but I just thought they would probably split the reps up a little more than they have. Maybe that's to come too. But yeah, Stokes he's been the guy across from Alexander and having a good start to camp too, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, and it's not even, I think, a lack of play from Valentine, because I've even seen some remarks that, hey, Valentine's not going away. He is fighting for the CB2 job. So hearing all of these positive things, it's very, very exciting to, because, again, we've talked about like, wow, this could happen, this guy could be this guy could be that, and you don't expect all of them to hit. Right, you expect, well, maybe this one will hit, or these two will hit, this one won't. This guy might get hurt, and things just sort of fizzle out the way they do usually. And somehow most teams, at some point in the season, have a problem with depth, have a problem with injuries, whatever it is. Guys just don't end up making it. And right now, it just seems like every good thing that you kind of hoped would happen is playing out. Down to Rashawn Gary is looking like. He's going to have a word with whoever thinks he's not Defensive Player of the Year, right? Like, this guy is apparently just tearing up camp right now. So yeah, I mean, it's just like, dang, like all these things that you kind of thought should happen, could happen, they're happening, and it's just wow, like it's more and more exciting as we go into this thing. It felt, we had a little bit of drama, I guess, with Jordan Love's contract not getting done right away, and we're going, wait, weeks? Oh no! All of a sudden, poof, that's gone. QB1's in camp, looking good, making an early connection, deep connection with Watson, like just checking all of these boxes. Like, oh, I don't know, will Watson be okay? Looking good. Will Love come back in and be ready to go? Looking good. Like, how's the defense going to look? Looking pretty good. Are we going to like Hafley? Hafley gave a press conference that seemed like he watched how brutal Packers Twitter was to Joe Barry and wanted nothing to do with that. Did you hear how he was talking about the fans?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean,
just gushing.
He wins every press conference. I'll say that. We'll see what his defense does, but he's really good in the press conferences.
He was gushing about the fans in the press conference. Yeah. I was like, you got me, guy. I'm here. You don't have to sell me anymore. Just give me a championship defense. That's what I want. But yeah, so it does. It seems like all of these things that we sort of saw happen and could happen, very, very exciting to see them come into fruition. Even the kicker battle. I think for me, I was sort of rooting for Anders Carlson, thinking like, yeah, he's the guy you drafted. He's got the pedigree, and his brother and Bisaccia can use him too. And there's all sorts of things and reasons why you might be hoping for Carlson, but all of these kickers seem to be having a say now, and so it's just it's cool to see all of this coming together the way that the front office and the coaches probably drew it up. Right, and that probably doesn't happen as often as we think it does. And Bill Belichick made that pretty clear with the dynasty with the Patriots. Like, do your job well, right? He didn't mince words. Like, that's what it takes. If you can do your job well, we're going to win championships. And it seems like all of these guys are doing their jobs well so far.
Yeah, it's been a good start. I mean, again, it's just a start. It's early in camp. I will say, not to flip this around, but the one position that has been concerning early is the offensive line. Now,
yeah,
it's early. Zach Tom's not taking part in the 11-on-11s, but you mentioned Rashawn Gary, and he is tearing up. I mean, every day he's in the backfield all the time, but part of that might be who he's going against. And first it was Dillard, and he's still mixing in there, Andre Dillard. Now it's Telfort, he's actually a good story, Kadeem Telfort. He spent all last season on the practice squad, was kind of an unknown, was way down on the depth chart. Now all of a sudden he's getting reps with the first team offense, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But he's been a little up and down. And, especially before Jordan Love got in there, the offense was brutal. I mean, from reports they could barely move the ball at all. And it's gotten better since Jordan Love has been in there, but it's still been more defense than offense winning the day. So the offensive line's got to start picking up and coming together. But there have been a lot of moving parts. Myers missed a couple of days with personal matters, so they didn't move Jenkins. They didn't move Sean Ryan. Like I said, Zach Tom's not taking team drills yet, and they said he won't until after family night. And then the competition at right guard. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. And again, it's still early. The pads have only been on for, a couple practices now. So let's let it settle in. But that's one position to keep an eye on because they do need improvement. And as good as the defense has looked, and that's great, and it's awesome news, if we go back to last season and last season's training camp, Joe Barry's defense was also doing really well through most of preseason, and it didn't really mean anything once they got to the regular season. So, let's as much as it's encouraging for the defense, like we need to see it and when games really matter. But as far as the offense goes, the offensive line, I hope that it can start coming together and at least stabilizing itself now so the offense can start getting back on track and making these more competitive in the team drills and practice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the offensive line definitely has to be stable for the rest of it to work. If Jordan Love has someone in his lap as soon as the ball is snapped, not much is going to work. So you definitely need to get that done. I honestly think that some of the struggles are, not to say by design, but right now is the time to let guys make mistakes, let guys duke things out, give guys like Telfort, shot with the ones to see how he jives with those guys, and you just never know until you give them the reps in some cases, especially at this level. All these guys are freak athletes. All of them were great in college. So, the margins in which guys are better are pretty small. But, R definitely agrees with us on this one. Dillard's only contribution to Green Bay will be making everyone optimistic about our pass rush. God, he's horrible. Yeah, and he didn't cost much. So again,
Right.
he's athletic. He's probably a decent guy to be around. Who knows? Maybe valuable in the film room, which certainly is worth something in training camp for sure. But yeah, I mean, now's the time to do that. Shuffle the deck, see who can do what. You got Jenkins running center. There's just they're moving things around, and excuse me. I think that's evidence that they are seeking that best five.
Yeah, and they're seeking the backups too, as far as who's going to be the swing tackle, and how they're going to be able to move some of these guys around if they need them during the regular season. Who's going to slot in at guard? Who's going to slot in behind Myers? And going back to Dillard, yeah, he's struggled. He's had a rough start to camp. Maybe he can figure it out. If he can't, he's really not going to cost them much, and they can move on pretty easily. And I thought it was interesting that Stenavich said, they had started him at right tackle, and he's played a lot at right tackle, but now they're moving Dillard more to left tackle. And Stenavich said that's his better position, which is true. But if he can't also play right tackle and make them comfortable enough that he can play right tackle and be the swing guy, then I can't see them keeping him, because, he's not most likely, barring a disaster, he's not going to be a starter. So you better have value as a swing tackle. And if he's getting beat like he's been so far at right tackle, then they're not going to be comfortable enough to keep him going forward. I can't imagine, even though he is a veteran, and behind him are young, inexperienced guys. I think they would go with the youth before they go with somebody that they can't trust to play right tackle for him.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that seems to be the way things end up having to go. Right? It's like, all right, we're gonna figure out how this is gonna go, who's got to be where, but if you're not one of the best five, yeah, you've got to have some value behind that in more than one spot. So, yeah, again, the contract that they signed him to seemed like one of those things where it's like, we'll see how it goes, and if it doesn't go well, then
doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, exactly. Best of luck. So good on them, because the upside is still high. You got a guy who's, again, athletic, first round pick, whether he should be or not. But yeah, so low risk there. And I think that it only adds to the competition. It doesn't hurt to have that extra body in there. Seeing a veteran guy make mistakes can be something that's very helpful to a rookie. Right? Sometimes you have a guy in there like Dillard to let him get his butt whooped early on in camp, when either it doesn't really matter whether he's okay with it or not, because he's a veteran guy. You shouldn't really be worried about his psyche and his mental transition to becoming a professional and all that. He's a guy who can handle making mistakes and trying to correct them. Whereas you throw a rookie in there right away against Rashawn Gary and let him get his butt whooped, it's like now you've torn him down and you got to build him back up, and don't start from a negative position. These guys can watch veterans get beat and make mistakes, and you can have the coach on the sideline going, you see why he got beat there? He did this instead of this. And you can have those coaching points before a guy ever has to have that negative experience of getting his butt whooped. Now, eventually you want him to get his butt whooped, and so he knows, all right, you do that, here's what's going to happen. Like, here's how you prevent that from happening. But yeah.
And I think it's going to be interesting too, as we go through now into the second week of practice, after family night, and then after the first preseason game, like how they reset the offensive line, how they shuffle guys, because they've done it in the past where you get more practice reps, they have more film on these guys, you see them go against a different defense, and they come back to practice and they may have somebody who's been playing right guard, now he's playing tackle, or tackle going to guard. Like, they're going to shuffle it around. They're going to shuffle around the second, third units. So it's going to be real interesting to see how that shakes out. And, it's for the Packers, it's the more you can do. So if you can play multiple positions, that's going to give you a step ahead of some other guys. So that's who you're going to be watching, like who can play more than just one position along the offensive line as far as the backups go, because those guys are going to have a better opportunity to make the team. But it's early. They just got the pads on too with the offensive line. So that's a position it's going to take the full preseason to shake out and to see what the roles are going to be for those guys.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of that has to happen, right? So
yeah,
we're not trying to call a race too early or anything like that. We're just we're looking at this thing and making some observations. I think you'll see a few guys come in and have stronger camps from here. Certainly guys are going to have plays or games, in the preseason, family night. Like, that's where we learned about Emmanuel Wilson. There's a lot of guys that you learn about in these games and stuff that, they have good practices, they have bad practices, and then they ball out. So that's what matters. Like, who shows up at game time and what do they do there? What does that look like? But there's a lot of plays being made on both sides of the ball. Hats off to the defense. They seem to have won. I think they've won all but one, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So, they're making plays. You're seeing guys with interceptions all over the place. I don't track how many interceptions usually happen at this point in camp, but it definitely seems like there's been a lot more.
Clifford's throwing a lot of them.
Yeah, Clifford's getting beat up. Talk about letting the veteran take the lumps instead of throwing Pratt in there to make his own mistakes. Although it sounds like Pratt's been rather good when he's in there. So we'll have to see how that plays out again. I think in the games will mean more than anything. But yeah, here we got a comment here from R Showers again. Says if I had someone emerge at right tackle, we could have Zach Tom at center. Get 5 great guys on the field. Could Royce do it? No word on the mountain that is Caleb either. Yeah, I don't think so. I think Royce is done.
Yeah, let's not hope it comes to Royce, because we
don't want Royce.
We've seen enough Royce. Let's hope somebody takes Royce's job. No offense. And he's right. Caleb Williams hasn't done much. He started late. He had an injury. So I'm sorry.
Caleb Williams hasn't done much either.
Yeah, he's not going to do much when he plays the Packers. Caleb Jones, I know he started late with an injury, so he's getting back up to speed. So, yeah, we haven't heard much from him. I'm done with Royce Newman. No offense, but we've seen enough. We know what he is.
See you, Royce.
We need better than that. They need to develop somebody better than that. And, I know the Zach Tom, he could play center. He could play guard. He was a pretty damn good right tackle. I would just leave him there personally, but we'll see how it shakes out. He's, again, he won't be taking team reps until after family night, LaFleur said. So, they're easing him along, and we'll see what they decide from there. Who knows with the way they change offensive linemen? Maybe he is playing center or a different position, but if it was me, I'd let him lock down right tackle like he was doing last year.
Yeah, let him do that. I think, if anything, maybe you have some shuffling in there between right guard, left guard. If for some reason you have to have Jenkins play center because Myers just not getting it done. Obviously, he's just now getting back into it from a slight injury. I don't know what injury did he have?
Myers had a personal issue or something.
Okay.
So he's back. Yeah.
So he's not even injured. He's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he comes along. I mean, there's nothing saying that he's totally done. He could improve this season and fill that center position, and now you don't have to think about that. Yeah, you have Zach Tom right tackle. You got Walker out at left tackle, Jenkins at left guard, and then looks like at least right now, Morgan at right guard. That, I think, would be ideal. If you can get Myers to play center at a level that you're happy with, that you don't need to be rotating other guys in to see how you can get away with not using him at center or starting him at center, that's ideal. Keep those bodies out there at the guard and tackle spots that are showing that that's their best position, And I know there was, Zach Tom could be a Hall of Fame center. I hear that. But, if you've got a good center in Josh Myers, you've got a serviceable center, and then you've got 4 really good players at guard and tackle, you don't need a Hall of Fame center. So, anyway, we're splitting hairs on that. But, yeah, I think really the offensive line is probably one of the more competitive positions right now in camp as far as, like, the most guys involved and the most positions up for grabs. But Otherwise, it's the DB room, the safety spot next to McKinney, cornerback 2, nickelback. Those spots are all up for grabs, and I don't know that we'll get definitive guys in those positions. I think it'll be a lot of package rotation, and that's a luxury, right? That's a luxury to be able to say, all right, here's what this team and this offense does really well. So we think the best guys to counter that are you collection of guys in these positions. And the next week that might look a little different. Maybe next week, your nickel back is somebody who's a little bit different because now you got to go against a really good tight end instead of a really good slot receiver. There's different ways to shift around to combat different strengths, and most defenses don't have the luxury to make those types of shifts or adjustments. I think is what I'm looking for. So yeah, that could get real exciting because of how intense the competition is. Sometimes you're left with, who's just the best out of, a group of mediocre guys. It's like, all right, well, this guy will go. Yeah. In some cases, you're left with like, shoot, man, any one of these guys could get the job done. Let's just have some fun with all of them, So that I'm very excited about, and I think that we all win in that case, right? The players win, the fans win. These guys look very fired up to make a lot of plays. That seems one thing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the secondary, and I thought this was interesting, but they've been having the outside corners and the nickel corners kind of do different drills, individual drills, which usually you have them all do the same thing. And they're having them almost like treating the nickel as its own position, which it kind of is, but it's not something that Green Bay coaches have done in the past, at least in the recent past, where you're splitting up the two positions, which I mean, maybe it means nothing, but I found that kind of interesting. I don't know. I mean, you're a former player. Have you ever seen the nickels running certain drills and the outside corners being separated from them?
No, that is, I would say that's probably a development within the last couple years, even considering the nickel its own position. Historically, that's your third cornerback. Like your nickel DB is your third guy on the depth chart, and maybe skill set dictates that, CB2 and CB3 are kind of the same, and one guy's better on the outside and one guy's better in that nickel position. But historically, no, that's not treated as its own position. Right. I think it's a good thing. I think that it really is, like, if you look at the tight end position on the offense, a tight end is not a receiver nor an offensive lineman, right? Like, he is his own unique position, asked to do a little bit of both, asked to be a little bit of a lineman sometimes a little bit of a receiver. But strategically, you use that guy the way you do because he creates an advantage for you, and in that position. You can't just say, well, he's a receiver because he's a really good football player. He won't be a great receiver, but he might be a great tight end, like Travis Kelce. Yeah, he's a great tight end because of the mismatches he's able to find. If you just lined him up outside at Z all the time, he'd be all right. Yeah. He wouldn't be great. He'd be serviceable. He'd catch the ball. He'd probably get open a little bit, but from where he plays on the field with the skill set that he has, he's a nightmare. He's a Hall of Famer. He's unstoppable. So yeah, I think that treating it as its own position is very, very wise. And again, it's a luxury, right? Most teams, and again, historically, that's your CB3. Most teams aren't equipped with this depth of DBs where you can say, hey, you're kind of this, you're kind of that. Let's put you here in this position that calls for a little bit of both and really make you that specialist. But man, it's kind of fun that they're in that position to do that, especially this early on in the development of the defense, the system. And you seemingly have a pool of rookies who are like perfect for it. I mean, that seems like what they went into the draft looking for. Were guys who could be versatile. Surprise, surprise, right?
Yeah, and they're fitting the defense. It's especially in the secondary with Bullard and Evan Williams, and Kalen King too. I mean, they're versatile defensive backs. Even Idrin Cooper at linebacker, who's
Yeah.
he's going to be a versatile guy as well. So
And
yeah,
he's getting more looks with the ones. So,
yeah.
man,
But
you know.
And Isaiah McDuffie's kind of he's been running as the number 2 linebacker next to Quay the whole camp, which that can change certainly.
Sure. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Again, let the veteran lead the way, right? There's no reason that you need to throw the rookie in there right away to prove anything. There's no reason why him not taking reps right now means he won't get reps in games or he won't start or anything like that. But early in camp is when you do let the veterans lead the way, especially on the field, because those guys are going to guess less, right? They're going to have less mistakes. They're going to have less hesitation because of figuring things out, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. But you're right. Like, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I just think it means it's a good thing that Isaiah McDuffie can do that, right? You're not immediately tossing Cooper in over him because you've been waiting for someone who's, better than that guy, which if you look at the safety position, they couldn't wait to replace the guys that were there,
Sure.
The front office response to McDuffie versus last year's safety class should tell you all you need to know about how much better McDuffie probably is.
Yeah, much different. It's interesting, and I think again, Cooper may be overtaking him pretty soon here, but I don't necessarily think so. I think they like McDuffie. I think he showed enough last year. He played a lot of snaps because of the injuries to Campbell. Looked good against the run. Yeah, he has some problems in space. And he has some problems in coverage, absolutely, but it's a different defense. And he also played a year under Hafley at Boston College. So, yeah, he's the number 2 linebacker right now. We'll see how it shakes out, but I certainly think, game 1 in Brazil, he's going to be one of the 3 linebackers when they go to a 4-3. McDuffie's going to be on the field, and it's just a question of, who's running with him and Quay, who's the third guy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's early, and Cooper's going to get on the field. He's going to be heard from, even though he's been a little quiet so far in camp. It's a week into it, so let it play out. But yeah, he goes back to the versatility we were just talking about as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that gets sprinkled into all of this, top to bottom, regardless of position, is when you have this depth of competition that you have, everybody wins because players can stay fresh. That was one of the really unsung advantages that the 2010 Super Bowl team had on the D-line, is those guys were always fresh because they were always rotating in because all of them were reliable, and even the pass rushers. You had these rotations, and when those guys are fresh in the fourth quarter versus, on the other side of the ball, you're not rotating offensive linemen. Those guys are in there unless they're getting injured or making mistakes, but ideally you don't rotate offensive linemen in game. That means that something didn't go right. So those guys are going to be tired. They're going to be, sick of fighting with these guys that have all sorts of energy and keep coming off the sideline and firing off on them like missiles. So yeah, I'm excited about that element of it as well. The receivers, I think, are probably going to benefit from that a lot. But the linebackers, the D linemen, those guys benefit from that probably the most. When you can have those guys fresh, they're going to react better. They're going to think better. They're just going to respond better entirely on the field to what's happening in front of them than if they were the only guy out there, had to take all the reps, and you're late in the game and you're tired and you're just doing the best you can and gutting it out. Yeah. So everybody wins in those scenarios. And while we're talking about safeties and defense, R jumps in again with us on the Packers Weekly podcast. Is Oladapo, wrong sport. Oladapo doing anything yet? I don't believe so. His hair is yellow, though, so mad respect to that.
Yeah, he's still out injured. They were saying it wouldn't be long, so hopefully it's soon here. But yeah, he's still, I think it was a toe he had surgery on. He hurt it at the combine and had to have foot surgery. So, nope, still not on the field yet. But hopefully soon, because, yeah, he's another versatile safety. And he's going to be a real interesting fit. And I think he could be a guy that makes an impact on special teams too because of his size.
Well, and that's another unit that wins in all of this, right? Is special teams. We're so used to the special teams being just atrocious and historically bad. When you have the depth that they have right now, you're going to have good players on special teams. You're going to have players who are not only trying hard. Special teams tries hard because that's their playing time usually. Those are the backups in other positions. But these guys are not going to be backups at other positions. They're talented. They're sharp. They're competing to be starters. They have a starter's mentality. I think you're going to end up with improved special teams. You seem to disagree there, Tim. Was that what I saw?
I can't buy into the special teams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been years.
Prove it.
It's been years. Yes, prove it. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope they can't get much worse. But I'm not buying the special teams until I see it. And with this new kickoff rule and the changes that's going to bring about, like I have no confidence that the Packers special teams are going to be out in front of it. Like I feel like there's going to be some teams early in the year that are, kind of setting a standard that they are going out there with schemes and with ways to attack it in coverage, and they're setting up returns. And there's going to be some teams that are really ahead of the curve with it. And I have no confidence that the Packers are going to be. I think they're going to be reacting to what everybody else is doing.
You've been hurt, Tim.
I've been hurt too many with the defense, and I have more confidence in the defense than the special teams. So no, I mean, I hope you're right, but I'm not there with the special teams. I'm not buying in the special teams.
I've been hurt too many times.
I've been hurt.
Can't do it again.
Too many decades with the special teams. So. No, I can't get there yet. I hope I'm wrong, and
I'm optimistic. And here, Keyshawn Nixon, he thinks he's excited about this new rule. Keyshawn Nixon thinks he's going to be feasting on this new format that they've got. So I'm going to go with that.
So.
I think he's going to be feasting on that. He's going to have a bunch of dogs out in front of him just ready to eat. These guys are going to be out there doing their jobs well, like Bill Belichick had told them to. And I think that this new era of special teams is also going to be led by who used to be the worst. We're going from last to first, baby. We're going to be the best special teams, the best special teams.
Is this a time machine that they have in special teams? The 1996. I mean,
that was the vision that I have. I have visions of Desmond Howard.
I hope so. I mean, Keyshawn should be really good with the new rules, but I think a lot of it's going to be how you scheme it now, because it's going to be so much different with the blocking and with who can come down and make tackles and where they can kick the football. Like, it's going to be so much different. I don't trust Bisaccia to be ahead of it. I think they're going to be reactionary and falling behind what everybody else is doing. I think there's going to be some guys on the cutting edge of it, ready to go and going to have some really cool designs from day one. And I don't think the Packers are going to be one of those teams.
Well, here we have record now, Tim. You've created a receipt, sir.
I hope I'm wrong. I would be more than happy to, eat my words on it, but I'll believe when I say it.
And we've got another question here from Technological Tarek. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but thank you for jumping in with us. How y'all think the receiver core will end up? All right. So we thought we knew how this was going to go, and someone is having a little bit of a say in that. I hear there's not only a Grant DuBose sighting at training camp, but there are several credible folks willing to put their Twitter reputations on the line to say that this guy is going to make the 53. Now, that you talk about competitions on this roster. The competition for the Packers receiver core, like basically receiver 5, 6. I don't think they're going to keep 7. I don't know how that works out with the rest of the bodies that they've got. But you got two guys who are pretty seriously with a grip on that receiver 5-6 role in Melton and Heath. But people believe in Grant DuBose. Do you believe? Is Grant DuBose going to be part of this 53 core?
I think there's a shot for it. I think there's a pathway for it. I mean, we'd be having a different conversation last year if he didn't get hurt. Because I think he got hurt in the offseason, missed most of training camp, and he came back and by the time he got back, it was so late, and Malik Heath had already, he was a star training camp last year, so it was hard for him to catch up. So DeBose was on the practice squad all year. If DeBose is healthy from the start of camp, he might have made the team, and Heath might not have. Who knows? I mean, it's possible. So I don't think he ever really had the chance to catch up to Heath. Could he do it this year? He's definitely behind Heath and Melton, and I think we know there's 4 guys who are definitely on the team.
Yeah, 1 through 4 set. Any of the guys we're talking about right now are not cracking 1 through 4 right now.
Right, and I think Bo Melton is. I don't want to say he's a lock, but I think he's in a really good place. Based on what he did down the stretch last year, it's going to take a lot to knock him off the roster. So then you're talking about Heath or DeBose. Obviously, Heath has the experience of having been on the roster all of last season, so you got to give it to him. But yeah, I think DeBose can give him a fight, and we don't know how injuries are going to play into it because that could always be a deciding factor too. But yeah, I think DeBose can be in the mix. It's going to be tough because it's a deep room and it's a room with a lot of talent and guys who contributed last season, so it's going to be tough for him. But I wouldn't be shocked by if he finds a way onto the roster somehow.
Talk about hot competition, man. And Soder, I think I'm saying that right, hopefully. Sorry if I'm not, has a bold statement here. Grant was the best-looking first-year receiver before he got hurt last season, I believe. Okay. I guess I didn't watch close enough to have that view. But yeah, I mean, he got hurt. So, then we get to see Wicks do what he did and all these other guys do what they did. So fair enough, man. How spoiled we will be if that is the case. A receiver room gets better. Bill Patsis jumping in with us. Good to see you, Bill. Thanks for jumping in, sir. I think DeBose can surpass Heath if he can block better. Great on teams. Now, if he can block better is a big thing there because Heath is a bully. That is one of the things I love about watching that guy is he is absolute bully ball. He gets out there and pushes guys around. He's mean. He wants to get out in a fist fight, it looks like to me. And I don't know who's bigger. I think they're about the same size, aren't they?
Probably. That's a good question. I thought Heath was a little bigger, but either way, DeBose isn't small.
No.
And to Bill's point, that's a great point. He talks about blocking and special teams. If you're going to be the 6th receiver or the 5 or 6 receiver, you better be good on special teams and you better be able to block. So, yeah, that's DeBose's path. Him and Heath, I think, they're going to have a good competition.
And are jumping in and agreeing with me. Oh, no. Heath is the best blocking receiver. He has more want to and physicality than anyone. That's what I see. When I watched Heath out there last season, that's what I saw. He was just mean.
He looks angry.
Yes, angry and just like you took his lunch money and he's coming to get it back. Like that. He's not coming for your lunch money. He wants his back. But yeah, so saying he's got to be a better blocker than Heath, I think is a pretty tall order. Not that it's not doable. For sure, it's doable. And the Packers win. Right, and this I think was something that Goot was saying a lot of, and sometimes these kinds of things can sort of go in one ear and out the other as like GM speak or coach speak. But they're saying they want a lot of competition. They're not trying to create complacent position groups. That's one of those things. Like duh, you want competition, of course, but if you look at some of the situations across the league, I would say they're not bringing in competition the way that the Packers are, right? The Packers are just as interested in making receiver 5 and 6 compete for their spot on the roster as they are anybody else, right? Like having Grant DeBose there and all like just the way that they've gone about building this roster across the board, that's what they've done. They've thrown competition into these things. They didn't go out and get 1 safety. They got 3, like that's what they're doing here. And when you do that, you win. Competition breeds success, because if a guy has to compete, he has to find his better version of himself. If he doesn't, he's not, and some guys are rare breeds like a Jerry Rice, who he is just endlessly competing against himself. And when you get that, you see how that goes. You see what happens. Michael Jordan, those types of guys, they turn into all-time greats. That's not the normal, right? The normal is, hey, I got a job. I'm the guy. I'm pretty good at my job. I'm going to go out and get 1,000 yards, going to get 10 touchdowns, and going to get paid, right? And I guess good on you. But when you have a guy who's like, he can't afford to think that way because of the guys that are in the room with him, now you've got a guy who has to constantly, even though he's already good, he has to constantly find a way to be better. That's where the Packers win from this team-building strategy. So got a little philosophical on us there. Sorry about that. And then Bill jumping in on this with another comment. I don't think either one will remain on the practice squad. No, I agree with that. I think that whoever is the first receiver to lose this job will be one of the first ones to get picked up by another team. These guys are good.
Or you never know. They could, trade him and get a draft pick.
Goot's good at that too.
You never know. But yeah. Before we even get to that point where we're figuring out 53-man rosters and who's going to be on the practice squad, just remember, like, every year we go through it and we sweat it as fans, like certain guys, oh my God, they're going to cut them. How are they going to, somebody's going to claim them. And then most of the time those guys go unclaimed and you get them back on the practice squad. So there's a long way to go. And even if you don't make it, they still may end up on the practice squad. So we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, there's a good chance that whoever gets cut is going to end up on another team, or they're going to trade him to another team.
Well, now Soder just couldn't leave this alone. He had to just drop a little bit of chaos into all of this and say, and now Samori Toure is going to go off and make the 53. So yeah, who knows, man?
You forget about him. He was on the roster splash, and we don't even talk. Haven't heard.
He's
a word
not
about
a
him
bad receiver,
Wow. Haven't heard a word about him in camp. I kind of forget that he's even on the team, but yeah.
But when we saw him, not a bad receiver. If that guy ended up being your receiver 6, you're probably okay with it. But no, I don't think that he will make the roster.
No.
I think that's probably, unless again he comes out and has just a crazy preseason or starts making plays in camp. But so far, that's not how he's trending. But, Arshower's making probably the best point in all of this, which is unfortunately a lot of guys get hurt in camp. We're lucky so far. And that's true. They're going to get hurt in camp. They're going to get hurt in preseason. There will be injuries, and that's why depth is important. And right now, the Packers have a lot of depth across the board at all these different positions, and that is a huge win for all of them. So yeah, I'm for one am very excited with how this training camp has started off so far. One other note that I had down here, I guess as we're coming towards the end of the episode, AJJ not going away yet, right? We're still getting some Anthony Johnson Jr. sightings. I believe he had an interception. He's one that in the offseason I said, this guy, he's hanging around. He might be kind of good. We just don't know. But I'm very excited with how the competition at the safety position is playing out too. So, any other news and notes from training camp, Tim?
No, I think we covered it. We had 3 practices this week and family night Saturday night. So we'll have a lot more to go off of when we talk next week and talk about those practices, talk about family night, and get ready for the first preseason game, which is coming up fast. So
yes,
yeah. But yeah, I think we hit on everything tonight. It's been an interesting start, and some nice developments coming up through the first week of training camp.
Well, we're spoiled. I gotta so I guess maybe that's the appropriate closing is we're just spoiled here. Everything is happening the way we needed it to, hoped it would happen. All this stuff. We got the Jordan Love contract. He's not overpaid. He's not underpaid. Everybody's happy. Everything's fine. You don't have this weird thing going on like you had with the Kyler Murray contract. Like, why'd they put that in there? Is he kind of an asshole? You're just like, no, everything went well. Everything's good. We're all good. So yeah, very, very excited with the way things have started. Hopefully things keep going this direction. We're going to knock on all the wood so that everybody stays healthy. Do all your superstitions or less than superstitions, whatever you got to do to keep these guys healthy in this preseason. for these Packers. Gosh, we are on our way to NOLA. In fact, I started a new hashtag, Tim. I need you to help me carry this on. Hashtag carry the G. Shout out to Cheesehead TV and all those guys with the carry the G. Hashtag carry the G is certainly a great hashtag, but now we are carrying the G to NOLA. Hashtag carry the G to NOLA. That's where we're headed. Super Bowl or bust. You guys can fight with me on Twitter about it if you must. But thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. Please go over to YouTube, subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel for us. Spike that like button on this episode if y'all had some fun with us tonight. Follow us on all the socials and everything. We'll follow back. We'll interact with you. We'll have some fun. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans.